Hello and welcome to session 2 of the 24th Biennial General Conference of the Association of Asian Social Science Research Councils. My name is Michelle Bruce and I'm the Secretary General of ASREC. The topic of this year's ASREC conference is Navigating the Future with and After COVID-19, the Role of Social Sciences in Asia, and it's being hosted and convened by the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia. It is customary in Australia to offer an acknowledgement of country at the beginning of a meeting, speech or event. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are joining this event from today. And we will do this with a brief video presentation.
Wherever you are across Australia, we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land.
The Darug peoples.
The Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
The Gundungurra people of the Southern Highlands.
The Ngunnawal people of the Canberra region on whose country we are standing.
And all other peoples of this vast continent.
Their ongoing connection through custodianship of its land and waters.
Physical and spiritual.
Through culture, language and ceremony.
Where sovereignty was never ceded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and still to come.
Thank you. The ASREC Secretariat is located on Ngunnawal land in Canberra, and that's where I'm joining you from today. And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. For those of you who didn't join our first session, I'm going to run through a few housekeeping matters before we begin the presentations in session 2. The conference is proceeding as a series of 5 webinars with a different joining link for each session. Now, each session will consist of 15-minute presentations from each of the presenters. And following the presentations, we will hold a Q&A session with all of the panelists. So please use the Q&A function to ask questions of the presenters and just type them into the Q&A box. And we also encourage you to use the chat section as well to enter any comments you may have on the presentations. I'd like to note that this event is being recorded. So we won't actually be recording the participants, but we will be recording the presentations. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the chair of our second session, Dr. Junko Hibiya. Dr. Hibiya is chair of the International Collaboration Committee at the Science Council of Japan and Professor Emerita at the International Christian University in Japan. Over to you, Dr. Hibiya.
Thank you, Ms. Bruce. My name is Junko Hibiya, and I will be chairing the second session of this year's ASREC. Our session is entitled Managing Pandemics, What Works and What Doesn't, Lessons from the Asia Pacific. We have 4 presentations in this session, and I would like to start from the one from Dr. Nonarit. Dr. Nonarit is a senior fellow and head of Macroeconomics Policy and Applied Economics Program at the Thailand Development Research Institute Foundation. His research spans many topics in applied mathematics, econometrics, and development economics in the areas of poverty, inequality, and economic growth. His primary interest is on the topics that involve Thailand's social and economic development. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Nonarit, whose presentation is entitled An Assessment of Social and Economic Responses to Thai Government to COVID-19.
Thank you, Dr. Junko. First of all, let me share my screen first. Is the screen okay for everyone to see? I think so. So this is the work that I have done in the past 1 year. So my institution, the Thailand Development Research Institute, we our role is to support the government to come up with the policy to help not just for the COVID-19 situation, but for every situation that the government faced. And today I'm presenting a part of it. So I selected one of the work that I have been done in the past year, which is on the title "An Assessment of the Social and Economic Response by the Government of Thailand to the COVID-19 Pandemic." So this work has been done with two of other of my colleagues, Mr. Wachalin and Mr. Thamarat. So for today's presentation, I have 5 things to cover. So I will introduce you to the work and then provide clear objectives. That's why we want to study this topic. Then I will go quickly to the methodology and then provide finding and conclusion. So first, let's talk about the COVID-19 a little bit. I think it's also true for other countries, but for Thailand, this kind of pandemic is considered to be one in 100 years event that haven't been happened before. So it's not going to be easy for us to formulate the policy in response to solve the issue. And in fact, when I looked into the past record, the last time that Thailand experienced this type of disease was dated back like 100 years ago. It was in 1918, which is the Spanish influenza pandemic. And the right-hand side is the royal accord that have been recorded what happened on that particular event. Back then, we haven't done much. I think we let the disease spread over the whole country, and we out of the total population around 9 million people back 100 years ago, almost 2.3 million people got infected, and 80,000 people died from the disease. However, because the whole economy had been developed by far from that period. And for the COVID-19, I think we probably have better tools, and also we also have bigger problem as well, because back in the old day, the economic are not fully linked, but right now we have the whole economy that are quite linked both internally and internationally. And the key idea for my work would be, what is the best way that the government can deal with the COVID-19 that affecting the economy? So because I have limited of time, so I will jump through some of my slides. So to do so, I divided my work into 2 different levels. One is on the macro side, like the aggregate way, the overview of how can we deal with the policy in the broad sense. And then I will also go into the micro level as well to see the policy that had been done by the Thai government, and then provide you some brief assessment, what actually works and what actually doesn't. So let's go on first with the methodology. So in the broad macro level, it's not going to be easy to find a way to kind of categorize what the government should be doing or what should not. So in my work, because I'm an economist, so my goal would be to how to raise the GDP the most during the pandemic. And in doing so, what I did was to conduct the cross-country regression and see how different countries choose different type of policy, and which one that we work on not will be clear if the country can actually raise the GDP to the highest. And this is my goal in the macro level. On the micro level, I am just going to provide you briefly the result, because it's require so many methodology to try to estimate the impact for each policy. And because we have so many policy, I selected only some of the policy that kind of be the key driver of the Thai economy. So the source of data that I use are from the IMF database, the Oxford COVID-19 government response tracker, and also the Thailand Household Social Economic Survey, which also has been done during the the COVID-19 period to understand the impact of the policy. So let me quickly go through the finding on the macroeconomic first. Like I mentioned before, the goal for my cross-country education or the analysis would be how to raise the GDP growth to the maximum. And what I use is the difference between before and after the event. So what I mean is that, so before the world experienced the COVID pandemic, we have the expected GDP growth for the particular year 2020 and 2021. And after is the GDP growth that would happen in reality. So we have the actual after the policy intervention and before the policy intervention. This is kind of like the difference in the GDP growth as the exponentially variable that I want to explain. I use 4 sets of choice of policy to check how well this policy intervention can be done to improve the GDP outcome for different countries. One is the healthcare index. So the healthcare index is representing the policy that kind of promote the healthcare system to fight with the COVID-19, which include for example, the public information campaign to raise people awareness, the TTI policy to raise the number of testing, tracing, and isolate people. And this type of index was conducted by combining the indicator from the Oxford index that I mentioned earlier. Then we also have the second set of policy intervention, which is the restriction index. And for restriction index is covering the policy that limited the movement of the economy, both internally and internationally. So for example, the policies such as lockdown, curfew, travel restriction, temporary closure of some businesses that like football stadium also include in this index. Again, this index also constructed from the Oxford index that provided detail on this. Then we have the economic support policy, which is the summing up between 2 of the key stimulus policy, which is the amount of money per GDP that the government inject to the economy in terms of using the fiscal policy and also monetary policy. And finally, we have the vaccination rate, which is the degree to which the percentage of the population that the government can actually get the people to get the full protection dose. And this is the 4 policy intervention that I'm consider study too. So here is the result of my 2 cross-country regression. One was done in 2020 and another was done in 2021. And of course, in 2020, we don't have the data for the vaccination rate because the first vaccination rate, I think, happened late 2020, and not so many people has already got vaccine during that time. So what I found from this regression exercise is that if we look into the coefficient of the policy intervention, we will see that the goal that the government should be doing in 2020 would be to raise the economic support policy because it has the most impact compared with the other 2 policy intervention. While in 2021, the government can choose to continue the economic support policy or to switch to the to mass vaccination is also the alternative policy that the government could have done. And in fact, if we use this cross-country regression and consider the case for Thailand, unfortunately, if we plug in the number for Thailand into the equation, we will find out that the outcome for Thailand is not so good. For example, in 2020, we have the infection rate. So now I'm using ranking to represent to show you the relative rank of the country who has who have used this each of the particular policy intervention. For infection rate in 2020, we are on the 106th position, which means that we don't have much infected people in the country. But then we have the healthcare policy that are very, very strong. The number is 49. The restriction policy is also quite strong, 88. The fiscal and monetary policy, we have inject a lot. We are on the top 38 in the world to inject the massive money into the economy. But at the end, the GDP outcome, we rank out in the number 117, which also imply that, well, maybe we don't have, we haven't inject much money, or maybe there are certain other factor that contribute to this bad outcome. In 2021 also as well, we also have improved a little bit in terms of the vaccination rate. We are ranked 41st, but then we also got the GDP outcome at the ranking 107, which is also not so good. For me, one thing that I like to mention is that the other factor that contribute to the bad outcome for Thailand in dealing with the COVID-19 is the fact that we rely heavily on the tourism industry, which contribute around 20% of the GDP. Normally, we have 40 million people, 40 million tourism come to Thailand every year to spend money on. But then after COVID-19 came, nobody actually come to Thailand, and this is the fact why we have so bad on the economic outcome. The second thing to note is that even though we want to spend much more, if you remember the regulation, it mentioned that we can also do much more by spending more, but it's not possible for Thailand as well, because in Thailand we have the debt ceiling ratio that prevent us to borrow by much. This is kind of like the predefined level that will create fiscal discipline for the whole country. It's set up that the government should not borrow more than 60% to create debt, to make the government debt to GDP more than 60%. And this kind of ceiling prevent us to prevent more and spend more to raise the economy. And that's why we have bad outcome for the economy. This is for what happened in Thailand on the macro level. I think I have not so many time left, so let me jump to the efficiency on the micro level. In Thailand, we have so many programs that used to raise the GDP. If we don't have enough money, then we need to try it to make it the most efficient, right? And to do so, the government had provided so many programs to help the people. I categorize program, major of the program. There are so many programs, like thousands of programs. So I categorize them into 4 big programs that have the most impact on the economy. The first one is the program that help reducing the cost of living. For example, the government pay for the gas bill, for the electricity, for the internet, so that all household doesn't have to pay a thing. The second is a subsidy program that target the poor income household. So in Thailand, we have people who held the low income card. And in that sense, the government provides subsidy only to that particular people. The third program is the co-paying program. And in this sense, the government will pay only half of the money that being used to buy goods and services. And then the people who enter the program will need to pay the other half of the program. And for the half program, we have 3 specific different type of program within it. The first half program will particularly for the low to middle household people to spending on the shop. Then we have the shopping program where the middle to high income household will use this program to pay in the convenience store. And then we also have tourism program that we use only for hotel and restaurant. Finally, we have the employment program where the government will hire newly graduate people to work with the government. The work that me and my colleague has done is to try to find the multiplier effect to all of this program and to check what actually works and what doesn't. And what we found is that the co-pay program is the most efficient one, especially the half program, which targeting the low to middle income household. And the program also specify that the shop that entering need to be SME as well. And that's why we have very high multiplier on both sides. For the other program, we also find that the first two program, which is the reducing cost of living program and the subsidy program, also provide kind of good net multiplier. But then we also have the other program like the shopping program, the tourism program, and employment program, who doesn't perform well in terms of the multiplier. And I think this is the lesson for Thailand, is that first, I think, because I think I'm running out of time, so let me conclude here, is that first, I think on the macro level, I think it's very important to actually know what you are doing on the macro side. For example, if you were in 2020, you needed to spend a lot more or more efficiently to raise the GDP. But on 2021, at least you should devote some of your attention to the vaccine, to do the mass vaccination, which is the most effective way to solve the problem. Finally, if you look on the micro level, you will see that different programs will have different outcome in terms of the efficiency. Therefore, designing the policy on the micro level also very important in order to raise the GDP of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nonarit. Thank you very much for making your very rich presentation short. Hope we have some time to come back to your points during the Q&A session. Thank you again. Our next presentation is from Malaysia. Professor Hazim and Dr. Melati will be our presenters. And their presentation is entitled Malaysia's Response to the COVID-19 Pandemic, where Malaysia survived the COVID crisis. So please start.
Thank you, Dr. Hibiya. Is the slide on the screen? Are the slides on the screen now? Yes, the slides on the screen now?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Good. And I can be heard clearly, right? My voice can be heard clearly. Yes. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Now, this paper is actually gives a sort of a broad picture of the situation of the COVID situation in Malaysia, where we will focus mainly on three areas, namely the Malaysian politics, economics, and the healthcare system and the COVID situation in Malaysia. So there's no really detailed analysis on any of this, but it's mainly to give non-Malaysians basically a view of how the COVID pandemic has impacted on Malaysian politics and economics and the health situation in Malaysia. So I'll try to cover this topic within the space of 15 minutes that's been given to me, and I hope I can do it. Yeah? Okay, so I would also like to acknowledge the contribution by my co-writer, Dr. Puspa Melati. Although I'll be presenting the whole thing because it's 15 minutes and it's a bit of a rush, and I think it will take up time if we were to switch back and forth. Yeah? So, okay, the presentation will be, oh, hold on, I think I will use the presentation mode. Okay, I think I'm getting the presentation mode now. My laptop is a bit slow, I think. I think the first slide is just a table of contents. Yeah. First part is on introduction. Second, on the impact of COVID on Malaysia's politics. Third part is on economic impact and response. Fourth part is on COVID-19 and the response of the government through the healthcare system. And the fifth part is the conclusion. Yeah. So basically, the background to this paper, well, it's about COVID. And as you all know, COVID first started in Wuhan, China around December 2019, about 2 years ago. And it soon spread to other parts of the world. And by March 2020, WHO had officially declared it as a pandemic. Yeah? And in this paper, we will look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Malaysia's politics, economics, and health, and Malaysia's response to it. First, we look at how it has impacted on Malaysia's politics. I have to say that the COVID could not have come at the worst time in the case of Malaysia, especially in terms of its politics, because that was the time when Malaysia was going through a political transition. After 61 years, the previous government, Barisan Nasional, fell, and a new government took over under the new coalition, which is known locally as Pakatan Harapan, or the Alliance of Hope, which won the general elections, or the 14 general elections, and became the new ruling coalition under Tun Mahathir Mohamad as the Prime Minister. Although Mahathir Mohamad was also previously the Prime Minister, fourth, and then he became the 7th Prime Minister in the May elections. And but then after 22 months of being in power, again, there was trouble, and this happened somewhere around February 2021, and one of the component parties of the coalition, Bersatu, withdrew from the coalition, which led to the fall of the government, because there's a loss of majority in parliament. And without that majority, the government could not maintain itself. It cannot stay in power. So there was that political crisis, and this led to the formation of a new government under a new coalition called the Perikatan Nasional, and the new Prime Minister was Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, who was actually from the Pakatan Harapan Alliance early on, but he defected and joined forces with UMNO and PAS and some other parties to form a new coalition. And if you look at the timing, around February, March, that was when the pandemic occurred. As far as we are concerned in Malaysia, February, we had already some cases of COVID-19 and so on. It came at a time when Malaysia was going through a period of political instability, of a political transition. And so when Tan Sri Muhyiddin took over as new Prime Minister and formed his new cabinet, they had to start working on how to handle the COVID pandemic. And he got to work immediately. He introduced a number of stimulus packages, which we will see under the economic session, a section on economics. But he had a real battle on his hands, because his coalition, his new coalition, Perikatan Nasional, only has a razor-thin majority in parliament of about 3 to 4 seats, you see. So he was constantly under the threat of a no-confidence vote, which would meant that the government has again to be changed, got to be changed, And this would be difficult, because any programs that are going to be implemented to face the COVID situation would require continuity, And if there's sort of changes in administration, changes in the government over a short period of time, then there won't be continuity, and the efforts towards curbing COVID will be affected, So he had to battle both at the same time, the political front as well as the health front. And after going through a series of difficulties in managing the political situation, he's tried to secure some sort of political stability by persuading the king. Malaysia is a constitutional monarchy. It's got, apart from the Prime Minister as the executive head, it has the head of state, the king, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, as the head of state. So it's only the head of state that could declare or proclaim a state of emergency, national state of emergency. And Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, as the previous Prime Minister, he advised the king to declare a state of emergency on 12th of January until the 1st of August in order to deal with the COVID crisis. That was the rationale that was given. That according to him, the nation needs to have political stability and a strong central government in order to implement the programs that the government has started in order to deal with the COVID problem. Yeah. So the state of emergency meant that Parliament was suspended. There would be no parliamentary sitting over that period of time. Yeah? And it was supposed to, the period, the state of emergency was supposed to end by the 1st of August. Yeah? But even as early as July, I suppose 2nd or 3rd week of July, the king, I think probably also under pressure or advice from members of the public and also the opposition party, advised the Prime Minister then, Muhyiddin Yassin, to reopen and reconvene Parliament, to have a parliamentary sitting in July. Yeah, and finally, Tan Sri Muhyiddin gave in, and the Parliament was reconvened on 26th of July, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But he had to face further difficulties. I will show it in my next slide. But I think the last straw came when he did not gain the favor of the king anymore. So without the support of the king and with pressure from the opposition, he finally had to resign as Prime Minister. Apart from that, the number of COVID cases had not decreased, contrary to what he had promised, that the state of emergency would be used maximally in order to control the COVID uprise, yeah? The rise in the number of COVID cases. But that did not happen, and that did not augur well for his administration and for his premiership. Yeah? So he had no choice, especially when members of his own coalition, about 8 of them, withdrew support, and therefore he lost majority in Parliament, and that led to his resignation finally on 16 August. Yeah? But luckily, political stability was restored when the new Prime Minister was appointed and sworn in officially took an oath of office in front of the king on 21st August 2021. So it was just that short period, yeah, where there was a new cabinet after the ending of the old one. Yeah? And here is my slide on explanation of some of the challenges that Muhyiddin had to deal with. Yeah, and it's mainly, I believe, due to COVID. It was sort of simulated by the COVID crisis that sort of provoked it. Yeah? These are some of the points that I've written down. With a razor-thin majority in Parliament of about 3 to 4 seats, his Parliament was constantly under the threat of a no-confidence vote. Yeah? Which means to say that if he did not survive the no-confidence vote, then he would have to resign together with his cabinet, and that means, you know, a new administration and perhaps new people and new policies and so on, and that would sort of stunt the progress of dealing with the COVID problem. Yeah? And the challenge to Muhyiddin's leadership came not only from the opposition, but also from within his own coalition. Yeah? And the implication of this is, without political stability and a strong federal or central government, it would be difficult to implement the government plans, plans which the government have laid out against COVID. Yeah? And an acid test of his leadership was the budget 2021, which was tabled in Parliament on the 6th of November, but finally approved in December 2020. Why I said that this was an acid test was because a rejection of the national budget, of the budget 2021, would have amounted to a no confidence vote in his government. Yeah, so it was crucial that he passed this budget was passed in Parliament, which was an indication that he still had majority support. Apart from the fact that the budget needs to be approved in order for resources to be channeled to the various government agencies to combat the COVID pandemic, especially the Ministry of Health. So the money can then be allocated to Ministry of Health and to other agencies in order to help to deal with the COVID problem. Yeah? And I've said earlier, to forestall the future challenges to his government, he advised the king to declare a state of emergency over a period of a number of months from 12th January to 1st of August, about 8 months or so. Yeah? But this sort of backlash has a backlash, and it impacted negatively against him in the end. Yeah? And as I've written here, a series of events finally led to his resignation on 16th of August, but luckily political stability was restored when a new cabinet was formed under the premiership of Ismail Sabri from UMNO, which was also a member of the Perikatan National Coalition, actually. And from my analysis, some of the factors that led to Muhyiddin's downfall are these 4 factors. That is the failure of the Muhyiddin administration to reduce the number of COVID cases. And there was a continuous rise, or for the most part, at least the number of cases was continuously rising. Yeah? In fact, it peaked in somewhere in August, where it reached to even about 20,000 per day, yeah? 24,000 or 23,000 daily cases. Yeah? And that was quite a high figure. Yeah? And also point number 2, the suspension of Parliament through the declaration of the emergency led the opposition and critics to view the emergency as a means of him holding on to power and as a form of suppression of democracy. Yeah? And third factor, withdrawal of support from the 8 members of his own coalition. Yeah? And finally, the rift between himself as the Prime Minister and the King concerning the reconvening of Parliament. Yeah? And now let's look at the economic impact of the COVID pandemic. The movement control order was introduced by the government on the 18th of March 2020 in order to curb the spread of the pandemic. Yeah? And what it meant was that many, if not all, economic activities came to a standstill. Yeah? And as far as work is concerned in government ministries and so on, it's mainly work from home. Yeah? Which I think reduces the effectiveness also. And so people were affected because especially small businesses and those in the B40 group who earn their income on a daily basis. Yeah, the small traders and so on. So what the lockdown meant for them was that there is no income. Yeah, during the period of the lockdown, because, for example, if their shops are not allowed to be open, customers do not come to their shops and so on. They cannot sell things, so obviously they don't have income. Yeah, of course, some of them resorted to online businesses. Yeah, and that helped to reduce some of the problem, but still, it's not the same. And also, for example, restaurants and so on, they're not allowed to open. Yeah. And you must bear in mind that people from this group, yeah, low-income group, they don't have savings, some of them, yeah? Or the small businesses, they don't have enough capital to sustain over a long period of time. So,
Dr. Hazim, would you please try to summarize your presentation shortly?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll try to rush through, yeah? So some of the responses made by the government was to introduce stimulus packages, yeah? And these are some of the problems, again, contraction in the economy, poverty, increase in poverty, and unemployment. There was an increase in unemployment. As I've said, people are out of job. And you can see there's a rise, yeah, in unemployment from February to about May. And then there was a decrease. And the decrease is mainly due to the stimulus packages. So the government introduced several stimulus packages, some of it in the form of direct aid, but most of it in other forms, not direct aid actually, although in terms of actual amount, it quite big, 250 billion, and then additional 10 billion. And then next one, Pinjana, 35 billion and additional 10 billion. You can see these figures. And also from the national 2021 budget, allocation of 322.5 billion, some of which went to the Ministry of Health. So these are the government efforts in providing economic aid to the people directly and indirectly. Yeah? And then in terms of the health system, you find also that there are various measures taken by the government in order to deal with all these active cases and number of people in hospitals, quarantine, and so on. But the healthcare system do have the capability to absorb all these COVID patients. Yeah? And the latest figures here, you have total number of cases about 2.4 million, total number of active cases 73,000, number of deaths so far 28,000 plus. But the percentage of the population vaccinated is at present quite high, 94.5%. Yeah? Okay, so these are some more information about the health responses. What are the measures taken by the government through the health ministry to have this My Sejahtera application on the handphone so that all the data about their movement into shops and so on will be recorded by the government, and if they have COVID, then they won't be allowed into certain premises and so on. And then targeted screening, and then the MCO, the movement control order, and enhanced control order, and then mass screening, isolation and quarantine of individuals who are infected, tagging of individuals, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So, okay, briefly, in conclusion, in terms of politics, it has stabilized somewhat now with a new memorandum of understanding being signed between the government and the opposition, so that there's some political stability. There is unlikely to be a vote of no confidence against the present government administration. Yeah. Secondly, in terms of economy, although the economy has suffered in 2020, contraction of 5.6%, which was the worst performance since 1998 fiscal crisis, but for 2021, we are expecting a net positive growth in the economy. And in terms of health, there's also an improvement with a reduction in the number of COVID cases. In fact, for the past 1 week, we have less than 7,000 cases per day. And also about 94.5% of the population has already been vaccinated. So I think I can be quite optimistic about Malaysia's outlook for the future in facing the COVID crisis. Thank you.
Dr. Hibiya, you still mute? I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Professor Hazim. I didn't mean to cut you short, but hope we can continue your discussion during the Q&A session. That was Professor Hazim, who teaches philosophy at the University Utara, Malaysia. And the paper was co-authored by Dr. Melati, who is a senior lecturer at the Taylor's University. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Our third presentation is by Dr. Wen-Chin Wu, who is an Associate Research Fellow of the Institute of Political Science at Academia Sinica, Taipei. And his presentation is entitled WHO Approves the WHO's Credibility and Support for China's COVID-19 Vaccines, Survey Evidence from Taiwan. Dr. Wu, please start.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my share screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for inviting me to this panel, and I learned a lot from the panelists, and thank you for the introduction. And my name is Wen-Chin Wu, and I'm going to present a paper with some survey results on how Taiwanese citizens perceive Chinese vaccines, especially after those vaccines are approved by the WHO. And this is a joint work with my colleague at Academia Sinica and also my colleague in other universities, including National Sintok University and National Taiwan University. So as we all know that the COVID-19 has caused a lot of life. And then as of yesterday, there are 4.95 million deaths worldwide, and then there are more than 200 million of confirmed cases of COVID-19. So this is an ongoing pandemic. And fortunately, in Taiwan, our pandemic is well controlled by our government. So we have relatively fewer cases, although we have some increasing cases in the first half of this year. But it seems that our government again control the pandemic. But now I think every country in the world tries to get their citizens to be vaccinated by COVID-19 vaccines. So as I noticed that in Malaysia, there are more than 90 adults vaccines according to our presentation. But the number in Taiwan is about between 60 to 70% for the first shot. And then we have a very low coverage rate for the second shot. So in short, so many countries would like to get their vaccines as soon as possible. And as you may already know, that we have a lot of choices of vaccines, like we have AZ or Moderna or Pfizer, Johnson, and then of course we have some vaccines from China, which is Sinopharm on the bottom left on this figure. So ideally, we can have a lot of choices of COVID-19 vaccines, but we are not able to know which vaccines citizens would prefer. But in Taiwan, it turns out that many Taiwanese citizens do not like Chinese vaccines. I'm sorry for the Chinese, but I would like to tell you that this one Kedah. So only 3% of respondents in early 2021 would like to take Chinese vaccine, which is Kedah. And then Moderna or BNT or AZ are relatively more popular than other kind of vaccines. Also, this is the survey conducted in early 2021. And this is another survey by a TV station. So again, Chinese vaccines, which is here, 中国疫苗, so it's relatively unpopular among Taiwanese citizens. And among those vaccines, American vaccines or UK vaccines are relatively more popular. So there is an issue where the Taiwanese government should purchase vaccine from China. But it seems that many people do not like take Chinese vaccine. So this is also another survey from Election Study Center in Zhenxing University. So basically, they have two samples. One is a sample from the internet, and the other is a sample from their own survey pool. So both survey pool shows the same result, which means that 77% of respondents would not like to take Chinese vaccines, and only about 20% of respondents in Taiwan would like to take Chinese vaccines. So the overall message from those figures is just to show that in Taiwan, Chinese vaccines of COVID-19 are very, very unpopular. However, it's not only the case in Taiwan. We know that China is trying to implement so-called vaccine diplomacy. So China tries to sell or even give for free their COVID-19 vaccines to other countries. So this is a figure from The Economist in April 2021. So we can see that both Russia and China try to give vaccines to many developing countries, including those in Latin American, Africa, and even Southeast Asian countries. So for those countries that are colored in light green, so countries that receive Chinese COVID vaccines, and for those who are in purple, are countries receiving COVID-19 vaccines from Russia and China. So we can see that many countries are taking Chinese COVID-19 vaccines. And also we can see that in the world, actually Chinese vaccines are pretty accepted in many other countries. So like Sinopharm, there are 64 countries are are taking Chinese vaccines, and also Sinovac, which is another Chinese vaccine. So although Taiwanese citizens do not like Chinese vaccines, but other countries still take Chinese vaccines. So, and there is also another episode, and that inspired our research in this article. So by June 2021, the World Health Organization approved 2 Chinese COVID-19 vaccines, which is Sinopharm and Sinovac. And we know that there is a very complicated process of WHO approval of vaccines. And then once WHO approve a certain kind of vaccines, it means that those vaccines can be incorporated or included in the COVID-19 vaccine global access, which is called COVAX. And this is a platform that a global risk-sharing mechanism for poor procurement and equitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, which means that other countries can ask from the WHO to get access to those approved vaccines. So including those 2 vaccines developed by China. So we are interested in whether, okay, although Taiwanese citizens do not like Chinese vaccines, but what if those vaccines are approved by the WHO? Will Chinese vaccines get more popularity among the Taiwanese after the approval or not? So, but in general, we try to answer this question from a broader literature of international relations, which means that do international organizations can change or shape public opinion on certain kind of policy, which means that does an international organization like WHO will change people's perception about vaccine credibility after its approval. So actually, there are some theoretical perspective to say that, okay, IO or international organizations can boost the credibility of country-specific product. So there are some reasons. The first of all is that we know that the international organizations may be more central, and then they may be more independent from countries' intervention of their approval process. So WHO actually can increase the credibility of those vaccines. And we also know that, okay, maybe WHO have more expertise on those vaccines qualities. So their approval may signal a good sign for the quality of vaccine, including the Chinese vaccine. And of course, the WHO may have more information regarding the efficacy of those vaccines. And that's why they will approve certain kind of vaccines before they are included in the COVAX platform. So based on those perspectives, we should expect that, okay, maybe the WHO approval will increase the credibility of Chinese vaccines in the eyes of the Taiwanese citizens. So we try to test whether this is the case or not. And then we also know that, okay, whether you trust those approved products also depends on your trust on the international organizations. For example, if you don't trust the creditor, then no matter what the creditor say, you will not trust their approve. So we also investigate whether citizen or respondents' trust will influence their evaluation of credibility or the quality of Chinese vaccines. So I'm short of time, so I will try to skip to our research design. So basically, we try to say that in the Chinese vaccines is very unpopular because many people, not only in Taiwan, but in other countries, do not trust China. So because they don't trust China, of course, they will not trust Chinese vaccines. But if China can get approval from the World Health Organizations, probably their vaccines will get some credibility because of those expertise endorsement. So basically, that's the idea of our paper. So we propose 2 hypotheses in our paper. The first one is that, okay, Chinese vaccines will be less popular among Taiwanese citizens. We already know this. However, the second hypothesis is the key to our paper. If Chinese vaccines are approved by the WHO, they will become more accepted among Taiwanese citizens. So we try to conduct a survey experiment. survey experiment with 2x2 factorial design. So we focus cases on Taiwan because I think Taiwanese people are less trusting the Chinese vaccines. Yeah. So we collect or we recruit online respondents, 950, and then we also fill with the sample with quota. And then I think that the timing of our survey experiment is very, how to say, it's good because that's the beginning of the recent wave of COVID vaccines. So before that time period, basically the COVID-19, Taiwan is COVID-free. But during that week, the cases of COVID-19 increased rapidly. So people are thinking of, okay, whether we should get vaccines. And then if we like to get vaccines, which country should we purchase from? So that's a good timing for our survey because people are thinking of the sources of COVID vaccines. So basically, we divided our respondents into four groups. The first group asked the following question: scientific have developed COVID-19 vaccines, and then do you support procurement by our government of COVID-19 vaccine developed by foreign countries? So for this group, they don't know or they are not hinted by the nationality of foreign country. We just ask a general question whether they support our government to purchase vaccine from foreign countries. However, for the second group, we specifically identify the nationality of foreign countries. So we ask our respondent whether you support our government to purchase vaccine from China. That's the second group. So they are asked to answer on a 4-point scale from strongly do not support to strongly support. And then for the third group, because we are interested in whether WHO approval will increase the acceptance of Chinese vaccines, so we designed 2 additional groups. The first group is based on the third group is based on the first group. So we ask whether our respondents will support vaccine procurement from foreign countries that are approved by the WHO. So, okay, that's also the WHO condition. And the next group is that whether they will accept our government to purchase COVID vaccines from China, and those vaccines are approved by the WHO. So that's a very simple research design. And then this is the result. As you can see that, okay, Taiwanese people do not like Chinese vaccines. So that's a second group here. Only less than 40% of respondents will support our government to purchase vaccine from China. However, as you can see, it's a very interesting result. If the WHO approved Chinese vaccines, then people's acceptance rate will increase by around 9%. So there will be 47% of respondents say that, okay, we can accept our government to purchase vaccines from China if it is approved by the WHO. So I'm running out of time. So, and in our paper, we try to show that it is because our respondents trust the WHO more than China. So when WHO try to endorse the vaccine from China, then it will increase the credibility of Chinese vaccines. However, the WHO's credibility cannot have any benefit on other vaccines developed by foreign countries because Taiwanese citizens do not trust WHO more than other Western developed countries. So there is a hierarchy of trust, and then this hierarchy of trust will influence Taiwanese people's perception about the credibility of vaccines developed by those countries. So we have a couple of robustness checks to show that, okay, there's indeed a specific low trust on China and also low trust on WHO that will result in the low acceptance of vaccines. But Taiwanese people trust other Western countries more, so they will purchase vaccines developed by those Western countries. So this is our finding. So although Chinese vaccines are less popular in Taiwan, but if if those vaccines can get approved by the WHO, which has a higher trust among Taiwanese people, then people will become more acceptance for those Chinese vaccines. So the take-home point is that some international organizations may increase Chinese credibility if China can integrate. So I think that would be the main takeaway of our paper. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wu. Let's move on to the fourth and the last presentation of this session. And that will be given by Dr. Kayadi, who is a researcher in the Human Ecology Department of the Research Center for Population at the Indonesian Institute of Science. Dr. Kayadi?
Thank you very much. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can, yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me in this webinar. So my name is Rusli Cahyadi. You can call me Rusli. I'm a researcher at Research Center for Population at the National Research and Innovation Agency, which abbreviated as BRIN in Indonesian language. The previous name of my institution is the Indonesian Institute of Science, or LIPI. So you will find LIPI and BRIN both words in my presentation. So I would like to thank my colleague in the social science panel. The presentation that I delivered here included data from the surveys that we conducted in early 2020. The social panel conducted 4 surveys at that time. My presentation is to some degree in line with Dr. Wen-Chin Wu. I'm talking about trust in government and the community compliance. So literature suggests that citizen level of trust is proportional to the level of compliance. So following this logic, we can conclude that Indonesia has enormous potential in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. Various pre and during pandemic studies revealed that Indonesian citizen has generally high trust in the government. But we also must keep in mind that the high trust take place in the context of other survey that stated Indonesia is in poor economic state, or other surveys suggested that we are having a worsened level of corruption. So trust in government is defined as a positive perception about the action of an individual or an organization. Trust in government refers to a positive perception of government's action in delivering public policy. However, trust in government must be seen in a multifaceted and even ambiguous framework. It is related not only to the legitimacy of the political administrative system, but also to individual experience with the government and its public service function. So this framework explains why the high-level trust in the government in Indonesian context does not materialize in the form of compliance to health protocol. Instead, as time goes on, as Indonesian cases shows us, the level of compliance have been consistently decreasing. At the beginning of pandemic, on May 2020, our survey revealed that more than half of respondents, 56.22%, stated that they will not mudik or going back to their hometown during the Eid holiday. And even the most enthusiastic travelers, those who usually going back every year, were willing to cancel their trips because the concern of possibility to pass on the virus to their immediate family back home. Those who decided to mudik also stated that they will follow the health protocol during the trip and while they were in their hometown. However, this good intention of the people did not materialize in the coming months. After the 2028 holiday and the end of the 2020 and the new year to 2021 holidays, the COVID-19 cases exploded in Indonesia. This was the time when the media reported, as well as some surveys, shows that the low compliance and even disobedience to health protocols. So based on the above description, a question can be raised: what caused such a trend? So, literature offer various explanation on this question. So, from sociological perspective, about the sacralization of health protocol, for example. Psychological perspective over caution and fatigue. Political perspective related the division of society, and then the policy perspective related the short-lived and inconsistent policies as the main explanation for the community in compliance. So I would like to focus more on the policy perspective. From the public policy perspective, we can see how the Indonesian government response has been generally viewed as slow and even downplayed the pandemic. Indonesian government also viewed as have short-lived policy and weak implementation of various regulations. One example is worth to elaborate in this is the stipulation of the Ministry of Transportation Regulation number 25 year 2020. This regulation regarding transportation control during the 8 holidays, which is enacted on the 23rd of April. The regulation stated that all modes of public transportation are prohibited to take passengers for mudik or for the homecoming for the 8th holiday from April the 24th to May the 31st. The regulation that is referred to and looked up by our respondent at the study I mentioned above as the basis for their decision to not going back home during the 8th holiday is finally set by the government. Up to this point, we can see that a parallel can be seen between the population expectation and the government's policy. The citizens are eager to follow government direction to tackle or to address the pandemic by canceling their homecoming plan and taking the precautionary action, as I mentioned earlier. But unfortunately, on May the 7th, this rule was canceled by a derivative regulation. So the regulation was in effect for only 2 weeks, in which at the time, the 8th holiday, which was the subject of the regulation, has not even occurred, but the regulation was already canceled. And this is one of the, what you call it, policy that is believed that is a turning point where citizens sense a lack of firmness within the policies made by the Indonesian government. To that end, their perception turns into conclusion that such unstable policies are not worth complying. This explains the lack of compliance following this incident. So, as a conclusion, I jump to conclusion. So, trust in government and level of compliance in the context of COVID-19 is not a direct cause and effect relationship. There is an intermediate factor at work, and the most important thing in the context of pandemic is policy consistency, as well as to ensuring that all elements of government are aligned in responding to and implementing policy. And the short-lived and inconsistent policies will only result in the disobedience of the citizen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rusli. So this is the end of our 4 presentations for session 2, and I right now would like to open the Q&A session. So far, we have received 2 questions in the Q&A box. So first, Dr. Nonarit, would you please respond to the question? Very interesting presentation from Thailand. May I know what are the future actions policies planned by Thailand to polish their economic sectors? Dr. Nonarit, please.
Thank you. So the government, I believe, has so many plans in mind, but there are not so many things that are out in public right now. The one that I think is the most advanced idea is the way to attract the foreigner to live, to work, to stay in Thailand. So before that, we kind of fear of the foreigner. We kind of protect the local people, local business. We don't allow foreigner to own a lot of land, to actually own a part of the community, and we always have so many rules and regulations to restrict the purchase of the real estate. But right now the government has a really huge plan to invite I think around 1 million foreigner to live, to work, and to stay in Thailand. But the people who are invited will not be just the low skill worker, but they are high skilled worker that answer to the need of the industry. For example, if we want to push through the EV, the electric car production, we need many skill entrepreneurship. We need many skill worker. Then we will invite those type of people. We also will attract retirement people to stay in Thailand as well. We hope that all in all, we try to get 1 million people who will spend around 1 million baht per year. Then we will get at least 1 trillion baht for free. This is the aim for the government right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nonarit. We've got one question for Dr. Wu. Let me read the question. Hi, may I know what is the underlying reason for the reluctance of Taiwanese people towards China's vaccine? And Dr. Wu actually wrote his answer back, but I would like to share your answer with everybody. So let me read your answer, Dr. Wu. Thank you. The reasons can be twofold. One, Taiwanese citizens have relative low trust on Chinese government because of the political tension between Taiwan and China. Second, the quality of Chinese vaccines are arguably lower than other countries' vaccines. Dr. Wu, would you like to elaborate more on your answer?
I think that would be sufficient, I guess. Yeah. So so basically, Taiwanese people are suspicious about Chinese vaccines because of those political reasons. And also it is reported that the quality of Chinese vaccines are lower than other countries' vaccines. Yeah, so I think that's why the approval of WHO will clear some suspicion of Chinese vaccines. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. I would like to pick up the second question, and that is addressed to Professor Hazim. Were there significant changes or improvements in the country's pandemic response as a result of the new leadership? What are these, if there are?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, yes, I think there's been an improvement as shown by the figures, the reduction in number of COVID cases in the past 1 or 2 weeks, especially. And also we have a new Minister of Health now, yeah? Under the new administration, under the new Prime Minister, he has appointed Mr. Khairi Jamaluddin, who was formerly the Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, has been transferred to the Health Ministry. And he was the one also who was previously heading the vaccination program. So he's the right person continue with the work. Yeah. So I think Khairi has been quite successful in implementing the vaccination program. And as we can see, now Malaysia's adult population, about 94.5%, I was told the latest figures, has been fully vaccinated, not just one dose, but 2 doses. And I think, and also the number of serious cases, stage 4 and 5 has also been reduced. Most of the new cases, I believe, are stage 1 and 2, which does not require ventilators and so on. So I think that's a significant improvement.
Thank you, Dr. Hazim. I would like to remind everybody, everybody who's attending the conference, please use Q&A button to submit your questions. So feel free to submit your questions using Q&A button. In the meantime, now Dr. Melati, Professor Hazim's co-author, is now on screen. So Dr. Melati, would you like to add a few comments related to Professor Hazim's answer, or any about your findings?
Unmute.
We cannot hear you.
Unmute,
we cannot hear you.
You have to unmute, Melati. Have you unmuted?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Hibiya. I really thank the questions put forth, and I think we actually I go hand in hand with whatever Prof. Hazim is saying, and I think it's really interesting for people to really take note that, like in the case of Malaysia, this whole COVID pandemic has the kind of impact that, as Prof. Hazim have highlighted, the political aspect of it that have this kind of impact onto the society, which is this additional concern that we have to manage on top of the pandemic itself. So as Prof. Hazim said, we are really hopeful because looking at the statistics now, the number seems to be going in a positive light. Of course, it's a long way to go. We still have numbers in thousands, which is, how initially it started off. We managed to contain it in a better way. But I believe that at this point, it seems that the economic stability is there. The reap of the additional exercises of injection for the economic injection, like the fiscal assistance, helping the people, and now we have lifted the MCO. People are going back to business. A lot of things are getting back to normalized. So a lot of things are getting on track, and I'm really hopeful too. And hopefully this political stability, there'll be no surprises again in the next couple of months. That is the hope that we have at this point. And I'm quite confident that we could, which is true with the current, the government as well as other people. So that's all that I just wanted to reiterate. But other than that, read on our write-up that will be shared with all. We've elaborated a little bit more in the paper too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Melati. Any more questions from the floor, from the audience? If not, or any of you would like to ask questions, make comments with each other?
Yeah, sure. I have one question to Dr. Nonarit.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for your interesting presentation, Dr. Nonarit. So can you explain more about the half-half program of the co-pay program? What make it different from the, for example, from the #1 program that you mentioned earlier? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the question, Dr. Leslie. First of all, the first program would be the free money that given away to the people. So the first difference would be the how the money is spent. For the half-half program, the government will just co-pay the amount of money that they're spending. For example, for the first program, the government will pay for you when you go to buy something in the shop, for example. But for half program, the government will pay only 50% of the amount that you pay to the shop. So this is the first key difference between the two programs. Then the government also specify the target people who can get into the program as well. For the free money, for the free subsidy program, the government normally provide to the poor people or the infected family who get COVID-19, for example. But for the half program, the government will target the middle class group, the people who normally go to work as a labor. So they are different in terms of the people who participate in the program as well.
Yeah, but in terms of what you call it,
the outcome, right? The outcome,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So the key different that drive the different efficiency level of the program, I think it depends on the behavior of the people who spend during the pandemic. Certain group of people spend more, certain group of people spend less. This is one of the key driver for the efficiency level. The second way, the second factor that contribute greatly is the way the government use the half program. Because for the subsidy program, the government need to pay for the participant in the program. But for the half program, the government pay only 50%, and therefore the government spend like $1 but get $2 in stimulating the economy. And that's why for the half program, normally the efficiency will be greater.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nonarit.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Well, while waiting for more questions from the audience, I would like to ask a question to Dr. Rasli, if I may.
Sure.
Why do Indonesians have such high trust in the government even during a pandemic? That was really surprising to me.
I actually asked the same question, but maybe as Indonesian, I have the answers. So, especially with the Jokowi's presidential term, since he very much put a lot of effort in developing infrastructure development. I think that's the thing that what Indonesian people see as this is the what you call the good government done to people of Indonesia, because the people can see what the government done to them in terms of a lot of big infrastructures. So I think that make high trust in the government. Yes.
Thank you. If that is the case, why did the government underestimate their trust?
Yeah, because most of the ministry that implement his policy is coming from different political party, and people from the ministry come from different background and different political party with their own agenda. That's explain why at the implementation level, at the ministerial level, some of the policy seems like contradict to each other or interpreted by the Indonesian community as contradict to each other. For example, we have the Ministry of Transportation want to limit mobility of people through transportation regulation. But another ministry, for example, the tourism ministry, they want people to move to have more mobility, something like that. So this is a very sectoral ideas of what they should do as the ministry that often contradict each other, and this kind of contradiction that Indonesian people understand as the government didn't make a good what you call policy in terms of pandemic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask Professor Hazim once again. You explained chronologically how Malaysia has been coping with the COVID-19. What's like the latest situation? And is the healthcare system capable of coping with the current situation?
Okay, I'll just say something briefly, and I would like to I'd like Dr. Melati to add on the healthcare situation since she wrote the part of the paper. Now, the latest news is that we have a national recovery plan divided into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, and so on. And various states are classified along these lines. You know, some states move to phase number 3, some have moved to phase number 4, and so on. And when you move to a higher phase, more activities are allowed. Yeah, more economic sectors are opened up, and so on, which is good for the economy. And as Melati has said earlier, recently on the 3rd of October, the Prime Minister has made an announcement that interstate travel is allowed. Now that is a big improvement, because previously people were not allowed to cross from one state to another. You see, Malaysia is a federation made up of several states, yeah. So there are state boundaries. So when that came into effect, people could not travel from one state to another, which means to say that if you have a brother or sister living in another state, you cannot visit them, and so on. And if you have friends or relatives, so people were separated for quite a long time. You see, so it's not only the emotional impact, but also the economic impact, because then goods cannot move across the country freely. But with the opening up, that means it will be good for tourism, for example. Now people can, you know, go and visit the tourist destinations and so on, and spend money and so on. And this was made possible by the number of vaccinations having reached 90%, because the government has decided that once the 90% of the adult population has been vaccinated, then they would allow interstate travel. And with this opening up, I think the prospects of economic recovery would be greater. As for the health situation, the healthcare system, I think Dr. Melati can say something more about that. Please, Melati.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. So yes, interesting. So initially, I think in terms of healthcare response in Malaysia, so the first hit when we had this number that soared. Just now, Prof. Hazim did not manage to really run through that. But in 2020 itself, when it hits Malaysia, so we had like 3 main waves that has been classified by some scholars, where we see that the number sort of rise exponentially. You know, when we had like big clusters, for example, we had one which is related to a congregation by a religious group, where you have thousands of people come from all over Asia, and people come together, and you know that had that really sharp increase. So when the number really went out of hand, now the healthcare response was it's sort of like in a shock state where they are not initially able to cope. So what happens was that at a very early stage, there was a lot of a decision being made who gets to stay in a hospital, who gets to stay at home. So initially started off with, you know, if you are asymptomatic, you don't have any symptoms, you'll be at home. And then we have some form of information being shared. How do you monitor yourself at home? Only when you have certain symptoms, your oxygen level goes down, that's when you rush to the hospital and things like that. So with and then over time, thankfully, in terms of healthcare response, what they also did was that they start mobilizing healthcare officers, personnel, and they start to have not just government servants, but also with the private sector. And then they start opening up more and more centers beyond hospitals to also manage this. So now at this point, if the slide that Prof. Hazim sort of just ran through, you can see that 77% as of 16th of October, 77% of people are actually home quarantined. Only less than 10% are hospitalized. So they're moving to that direction, and then we also have access to more home test kits that is affordable. So we have better, I would think, better way to manage it now, despite the limitation that we have in terms of manpower as well as real facility. So I think over time now we are getting better at this, and now with more vaccination, more people are vaccinated. So hopefully we don't have all these real big cases, and we are able to sort of manage the people given the constraints that we have here. And this is what the future should be. We definitely have to have some form of revamp to be more prepared in the near future. In fact, to also work not just within Malaysia, but also among our Asian counterparts, for example, because this kind of support is, I think, is needed many times. So there's a lot that we need to do to reform in terms of our healthcare system. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, I do not see any more questions, so I would like to...
Ms. Chair, can I direct my question? Just one quick question to our presenter from Malaysia.
Yes. Yes, please.
So right now in Thailand, we have a new outbreak from the southern part of Thailand, which is the area that connected the border with Malaysia. I'm wondering about the situation on your side, whether in Malaysia also have similar outbreak in the part that connected with Thai border as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The states that are relevant in terms of being having a shared border with Thailand, the northern states are Perlis and Kedah. Yeah? And from the figures that I've been observing this past 1 week or so, the figures have been actually going down or stabilizing at, for the state of Kedah, for example, around 300 plus, whereas previously it was more than 500. And Perlis also in the 20s perhaps. So I don't think it filters down to the northern states of Malaysia, the outbreak in the COVID cases in Thailand. I think it's probably due to the restriction on travel from Thailand to Malaysia and vice versa.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, I would like to remind the audience that the full paper of today's presentation are available at the link which has been sent from the Secretariat. So if you're interested in, please do visit the site and try to read every one of them and maybe ask questions later on one form or another. So this is the end of session 2 today. And I just would like to share with you one comment sent to the host and panelists only. Very informative and high quality presentations in both session 1 and session 2 today, and can enlighten scholars and professionals outside the social science disciplines. Social sciences are making a very significant contribution to our understanding of global and local challenges at the critical juncture. I would like to conclude this session by this wonderful comment, and let us continue our discussion tomorrow. So please sign in using the separate link, not the same one from this session tomorrow. Wednesday, 27th October. We'll start session 3, health promotion and disease prevention, public health strategies during pandemic, tomorrow afternoon. So thank you very much for joining us, and let us conclude our session today. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.